Good morning, Heaven Bound family, and anyone who may be listening. This is Pastor Larry with a moment in the Word on this Friday, the 12th of March, and we're down now to the 20th chapter of Revelations. Revelation chapter 20 is actually divided into two parts, and the two parts is kind of divided up. In other words, verses 1 through 3, and then verses 10 down through 15 deals with the dooms of Satan and the doom of Gog and Magog. Verses 4 and down through, I believe it is verse 9, deals with the millennial kingdom. And trying to decide this morning which one to do first, because we won't have time to do both of them. And so let's look at the millennial kingdom first, since how that it actually begins in verse 1 there with the doom of Satan. So I tell you what, let's just read and see if we can't fit it all together. We'll stop at somewhere around 10, 12, 15 minutes. He says, "And I saw another angel come down from heaven, having the keys of the bottomless pit and a great chain in his hand. And he laid hold on the dragon, that old serpent, which is the devil and Satan, and bound him 1,000 years, and cast him into the bottomless pit, and shut him up, and set a seal upon him, that he should deceive the nations no more, till the 1,000 years should be fulfilled. And after that he must be loosed a little season." Some questions here that might be asked is, number one, why does God not destroy Satan in chapter 19 in verse 20 when he casts the Antichrist and the false prophet into the lake of fire? Why doesn't he cast Satan in? Well, there's an important reason why, and that is, if you go back to the 7th chapter, the 16th verse of 1 Samuel, also more clearly in 1 Chronicles, in chapter chapter 17, we'll get it right here, in 1 Chronicles, chapter 17, in verses 11 through 14, we see here that God promises David that the Messiah, that a son will come through David who will reign upon God's kingdom, and it will be an everlasting kingdom. So this has not happened, and it will not happen until the end of the millennium. Till the end of the Antichrist, the tribulation period there. Now, we studied in chapter 19 that the Antichrist and the false prophet are cast into the lake of fire, where they will burn forever and forever. Since when the spirit and soul is separated from the body dies. In a resurrection, the spirit and the soul will reconnect to the body. And since the soul and the spirit cannot be consumed, they will live forever and ever. The smoke of their torment ascendeth up forever and ever, we're told in chapter 14. Now that Satan is not destroyed in chapter 19, but he is bound for 1,000 years. And there are those who don't believe in the 1,000 years, try to make it symbolism. But if you notice 7 different times here in the first 7 chapters, 1,000 years, very specific. God could not be more specific that 1,000 years is going to exist while Satan is bound. Now, why so? Why does Why does God bind Satan 1,000 years? To fulfill the promise that God made David. God is faithful, and God makes a covenant with David. It's not based upon them their sin. It is a promise, strictly a covenant made with David, that the Messiah will reign on his throne. And so Satan is bound in order that God might fulfill his promise with Christ. And let's go on and read down a little bit more here. It says in verse 4, "And I saw thrones, and they sat up on them, and judgment was given unto them." Now then, the only people in Revelations who is described as setting up on thrones is the 24 elders back in chapter 4 there, and chapter 5, 4 and 5. So those sitting upon the thrones is the church. It's the Old Testament saints and the New Testament church. We'll see them again in chapter 21. The 24 is mentioned only twice. Once in Revelation, they're sitting upon the throne. And in the 21st chapter of Revelations, the 12 gates have the names of the 12 tribes on it. The 12 foundations to the eternal city has the names of the 12 apostles. Put the two 12s together, you have 24. There's some who try to make this 24 the church. It doesn't fit. Those sitting upon the throne is the redeemed of God. They sing a song, "Thou hast redeemed us from every nation, kindred, tongue, and people." So he says here, "And I saw thrones, and they sat upon them, and judgment was given unto them. And I saw this." On the throne is the 24 elders. Now then, "I saw the souls of them that were beheaded for the witness of Jesus and for the word of God, which had not worshipped the beast, neither his image, neither had received his mark upon their foreheads or in their hands, and they lived and they reigned with Christ 1,000 years." Now, who are these? These are those souls under the altar there in Revelation chapter 6, the fifth seal that was open. There were those under the altar crying out, "How long?" And well, they have been avenged there in chapter 19. And now then, they are raised to reign with Christ along with the 24 on the throne. The church and the saints that are saved during the tribulation period will all reign with Christ 1,000 years. And we have alluded to this before. Don't know that anybody, never read anybody else commentary on it, and don't know if anybody else accepts it or not. But back, I believe it's in Matthew 18. I may need to be corrected on that. But Jesus promises those who will follow him that they will reign upon thrones, and they will reign with him. And Peter asked Jesus a question. He said, "Well, what's about us? And what are we going to get out of this, Lord?" And Jesus answers, and I'll look up that verse and give it to you maybe tomorrow if I don't forget. But Jesus said to Peter, "You who follow me in the regeneration will set up on 12 thrones and shall reign over the 12 tribes of Israel." So it appears that the apostles are going to reign over the 12 tribes of Israel. How about the rest of us? What are we going to reign over? Well, Jesus said in his parable concerning the talents there, when those servants that he sent out, when they came back, the one said, "Lord, I have 2, I've multiplied it, now I have 5. The one said, I have 5, I've multiplied it, now I have 10. Jesus said, well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful over little. I'll cause you to reign over 5 cities, over 10 cities, based upon what they had accomplished. And so it appears that God's people are going to reign with Christ over the cities of this earth during the millennial reign. What is the millennial reign going to be like? Well, you'd have to read Isaiah chapter 60 through 66 to get all the details there. But just share with you a few things. During that 60 years, Satan will be bound. Nobody will be tempted to sin during that 60 or that 1,000 years. Secondly, war will not be known. There'll be no more war during that 1,000 years or to the end of the 1,000 years. And then there'll be a change in the animal kingdom. If you read Isaiah chapter 11, verse 6 through 9, the wolf, the lion, the cows, the calves, the children will all be in relationship with one another. Neither will hurt the other. And then human life will be prolonged. If you read Isaiah chapter 66 or 65, verse 20 there, life, a person just 100 years old will be considered a child. Kind of evidently we will go back to like it was before the flood there. Only we won't die at all. Or even though Adam lived to be 930 years, ultimately he died. Methuselah lived to be 969 years, but ultimately he died. We will live to be as old as trees, Isaiah says. But here he talks about the fact that a person just 100 years old will be like a child. There will be a sevenfold increase in light if you read Isaiah chapter 30, verse 26, and Isaiah chapter 6, verse 19 through 20. Isaiah is going to say that the sun and the moon will not give light anymore, for God will be the light of that city. And so these are some of the things that's going to happen during the millennial reign. And someone has asked, well, who are we going to reign over? Well, if you go back to Isaiah chapter 14, in chapter 13, we've said it so many times, 2/3 of Israel will be killed, but a remnant, 1/3 of Israel will be saved. They will enter into the millennial kingdom in their natural bodies. They will not die. Also in Zechariah chapter 14 and verse 16, Zechariah says, and all of them that was left of the nations that came down against Israel. Remember, according to Ezekiel, 1/6, Ezekiel 39, I believe it is, 1/6 of the earth's population is going to be spared during the millennium, during the Battle of Armageddon there. So this 1/6 who evidently will have repented, will have accepted Christ, will enter into the millennium. So you'll have 1/6 of the world's population, plus you'll have 1/3 of the Israel nation who will come into the millennium in their natural bodies. They will be able to procreate during that 1,000 years. So by the time that the 1,000 years is up, there's going to be many people on the earth who have never had opportunity to accept Christ's lordship over their lives. Remember, during the 1,000 years, Christ is going to reign with a rod of iron. In other words, he's going to have strict rules there that we're going to live by. And many of those who enter in will not want to live by those rules. At the end of the 1,000 years, Satan will be loose for a season that he might tempt all of those who have been born during the millennium. who's not had an opportunity. They've not had a tree of knowledge to partake of or not to partake of. Well, now then they're going to be tempted. And many of them will say, we don't want this man ruling over us. We go back to Jesus' parable there. And consequently, these are who will reign over. Now, we'll deal with what's going to happen to them and what's going to happen to Satan tomorrow. And so, as I say on radio, stay tuned. But that's what's going to happen during the millennium. That's why we're going to have a millennium, is so that Christ might reign on the throne of David according to the promise, the covenant God made with David. And the remnant of Israel is going to be saved according to Romans chapter 11. And so the millennium is all about God fulfilling his promises that he has made throughout the Old Testament there. Hey, this is Pastor Larry with a moment in the Word, and hope maybe we've answered some questions for you this morning. This is Friday. Go forth. Don't just thank God it's Friday. Thank God this is the day the Lord has made. Rejoice and be glad therein. Look for somebody you can be a blessing to today. Bless them, it'll bless you, it'll bless God. And God will bless you in return. Have a blessed and wonderful day.